Hello, and welcome to this podcast to Nowhere. My name is Allie with a.Marie.Speaks, and this is part of my season 2 Lost in Transition podcast videos. It is July 28th, 2025 today, and I don't think I'm numbering these anymore. Thank you for bearing with me in my disorganization and in my bit of a brainstorm session that today is going to be. So if you're looking to listen to somebody just blab, welcome and thank you for your time and your ears, heart, and mind. I am going to be talking today a bit about sequential growth, positive systems, freely offered service, and math. And the math of it all. Crunching the numbers in this sort of, positively aligned, multidimensional accounting, energetic accounting, balancing. What is accounting but balancing the sheets? And now I sort of understand a little deeper why that was my first venture into learning at, when I went to college, sort of my first interest was, business and accounting. And I really liked accounting. Except for the tediousness of actually training to become just an accountant. I didn't like that. I didn't like the rigidity and the sort of trap that schooling and that career seemed to be, and how pigeonholed and repetitive it becomes when you understand about balancing books and have liking to do that kind of organization and observation. It's a truth-seeking, I think, and it has a lot to do with communication, troubleshooting, and compromises. Exchanges that require changes. I don't know. I'm getting, a little bit lost in my own thoughts here. The reasoning behind why I like to do it, I guess, isn't so important, right? Today, I have many things in front of me, lately, and today I see, things coming sort of together, some peripheral pieces, some center pieces, not totally sure how it will all click, but just having the relative outline, the architecture is there. So that's what I'm kind of hoping to develop and speak about a little further. It's my own prep work, sort of strengthening and clarifying work behind a few different projects that I have, working on a couple of these blogs that I really think are going to come out and turn into maybe even a video to go along with the blog. I like to do those visuals, those infographics, and sort of walk through them and such. So I'm hoping to turn those into whole sections of learning on maths, right? Of it all. Magical math is kind of what I've started calling it, but I'm not sure if I'll stick with that. But about phi, the golden ratio, about imperfect perfect sharing, and the way of sort of positive alignment, if we look at systems, always seeks to end the day with a bit of an abundance and a surplus. Everything in the, always a little bit in the black. And the, my brain is like trailing today. the thing of it is, I sometimes I get in these repetitive loops when I start talking about, lately, when I start talking about these systems and sharing and 1.618 phi, that I'm trying to say the same thing in a different way, and it's, it's also, this is teach learning at the same time for me. So in the repetition comes better refinement. This is a lot of reasons why I like to do this kind of hash it out, talk it out kind of thing for myself. Not so much as to be something presented for listeners, but something that I offer out to listeners also to listen to, so that people feel more confident in coming to their own conclusions, knowing that others out there are also doing this kind of cognitive exercises to sort of flush things out, iron out wrinkles, and in their own ways, for their own projects, their own lives, their own tasks and things, And I think when we see others do it, when I remember others are doing this too, it gives me greater confidence. And again, it refines the material, which is also helpful, because the material in itself, it's not even my own, knowledge. It's just an accumulation of what I have around the true knowledge, that I hope to create a better perspective on. So I guess it all has worth in the end, no matter how I kind of beat around the bush. But the world surrounding us makes it difficult to get positive systems going, to be able to really see what they could do, because it takes quality of commitment that is not completely available. The set and setting. Now, a lot of times you get very wrapped up in talking about what's the set and setting and why is it not available, and what about when it is, what about when it is, versus because it is not now. And a lot of times what I come back to saying is, well, there's no sense in looking and listening and venturing too much about what it isn't, because what we have to deal with is what it is right now. However, that, in a negative standpoint, locks you in to negative transactions in the habitual state that we're in right now, where it's predominantly negative around us. Me, myself speaking, of course. There, to me, feels like sense and sensibility as to the place that you're put into, your coordinate plane, and the place that you occupy in the whole. So your set and setting in exactly where you're at, I believe, has purpose. And in that acceptance refines my discovery a bit more, and says to me that although I am sort of surrounded by a lot of negative systems, I'm able to see things differently, and that has a purpose. So I shouldn't conform to that which doesn't feel correct to me, right? But this is the thing. How do we continue to operate positive processes while surrounded by infringing, indebting, systems all around you. When it seems that interaction between systems is something that's, the point of the world. I have a service to share. I have a calling to do. I enjoy interactions. And not to say that I don't enjoy any interactions around me either, or that it's predominantly negative in this, in the sense that there's no positivity whatsoever. There is positivity. It's, again, then I turn around and say to myself, here's your key to your own, it's what you're focusing on, and you've chosen to highlight it in an angle that showcases a higher ratio of negativity. But if I chose to focus on instead the positive potentialities and their brightness, and instead, and the potentialities available in those positivities out there, although they might not be as many in quantity, they could be more value qualitatively, right? And so remembering and honoring that, and in fact, thinking again about shadow and negativity in itself doesn't really hold a qualitative value. It, because it's not the creation of newness. It's an illusion happening of the bending of truth and light. And nothing new can be made, really, inside the shadowed, inside a negative system. You can bring sort of quote-unquote new energy into it, which is what it requires in order to function as well. But unfortunately, that's like a catch-22 in itself. It's such a negative self-fulfilling prophecy looping. But there's not, there's no creation of newness to be spread around outside the system. Whatever is created within the system is created for the system's utilization. It's not extra and given away for free. Businesses don't operate like that. It doesn't work like that, right? If there's something for free, you better know there's a catch with it, because but this is the negative alignments. The positive alignment in itself actually is abundant, surplus based, and it actually does offer free service first. And this is sort of also why the world is such a unique place in the shapes and forms that are made here, and it is such a gradient of light quality and shadow. It's whatever it is here, the world as it is. We can get back to what I started to talk about before, and the structure and the architecture of the world, and regardless of why and how it's been put together and run, we can't not accept and acknowledge the fact that we live in dimensionality, form, shape. There's edges, there is light and shadow, visible and invisible to our eye even. That has influence on the world around us. There's this external validation always of our dimensionalities, right? So it's very silly to just kind of shrink down our dimensionality and force us into, flatter planes and. But I'm going to get a little bit too vague. But there's these other things brewing, and I only kind of spoke about one of the blogs and things brewing, but these other ones that I'm talking about, it's not just phi and the spiraling that creates beauty to be witnessed. It creates form and function around us. It's not just sacred geometry, platonic solids, but because they create the world around us and they're pretty, and then because our mind sees them, we create beauty because, we see symmetry and color and all these things. But I mean, and yes, we do. Those are added features, the rippled effects, and they're enjoyable, of course. They have value, I think. But there's an architecture underneath it. There's structure and form. There's actual measured, well, see, this is the word again, but measured has almost an immediate sort of hierarchical, authoritative connotation to it that I don't appreciate. Because organic life, Mother Nature, so to speak, doesn't measure. She doesn't have a measuring tape in her pocket. And yet her eye measures perfectly as to what needs to be had. Is how long, the space there, this needs to be that long, the spot, it's just like the perfect half of saying the perfect golden ratio that creates the spiral. It isn't a perfect half as in 1.5, cut it down the middle, and it's equal halves. It's 1.618, and, argumentatively some other numbers, depending on what your research is and what you stand with this. But, meaning to say it's not really definable. It's vague. It's a gray area. And that creates the ability to share correctly. That tells us plainly with truth what I'm saying about Mother Nature doesn't have a measuring tape in her pocket. It's not necessary even to get what needs to be done. And in fact, to get what it needs to be done in formation and this ever-flowing change that is our reality, it has to be that way because everything is in flux. Everything does need to bend with the wind. It does need to have, make it through a storm. It does need to be adaptable to change because the world in itself resides through this, many different influences. Like I said before, it's a third-party reality space out here. It's been chosen a space of discovery in that form for purpose out there. It's all so. Instead of trying to argue about why or why not and all these things behind it, if we instead look at it and then we see that it does have form and function, it does matter, but we don't have to go into it so rigidly that we have to I can't even speak. I'm getting so overexcited here. Pull out this measuring tape and force strict measurements on things as this control mechanism for our one point of perspective that we inhabit here. Because in fact, the choice of expansion to discover finite within the infinite that God's source has decided to give separation of exploration. You can't have a whole. We've denounced the right to the one whole view. So you can't negate that at your own will and want to just do as you please and then step into it for your own self-serving benefits. You don't think he doesn't obey his own rules? Like they say about Aslan and Narnia. That's a quote from, if you've never read the books, but I'm a huge fan and I tend to quote them a lot. Because there's a lot of significance, I think, in some of those words. And I think authors in general pull wording and wonderful visions and things from this higher space, this imagination space of the spirit realm of source consciousness activity that is outside of time, and it's connectivity to the whole and oneness. And so I think great truths come from there. They're translated through, of course, the medium and filter, and that's can put in impressions of all types of infringements, depending on the author and where they're at in their life and all types of things, intentions and such. So But we're also should be free to interpret through our own intentions what we choose to get out of that, regardless of what they might be trying to impress on the space, because they put it in the third-party space. So it's free for us to grab and look and interpret in our own reality space, take in whatever we please to about it. That's the beauty of creator consciousness. That's the beauty of 360-degree vision in your own place and spaces, to being able to bring that whole into your space, sort of as uninfringed from out there as possible, disregarding others' opinions on it, disregarding, in fact, even what their maybe tyrant creator has like chained it up with, and saying, no, actually, I see you for who you truly might have been, who you truly are, because all is a creation through God Source One at the end of the day, initially, as far back as it might have been created. Even how old it is, it doesn't matter. How much has been piled up on top of it, how many mattresses are above it. When the princess lays on top of that mattress, the P is known that it's there, right? And so you're not going to disguise it. And so pulling out that kind of stuff and feeling that through is like seeing the architecture and the numbers and the gnosis of the spiral, of platonic solids, of angles and formations, of sacred geometries, of energy manifesting itself in form, and how it takes many forms at once, and all forms and no forms, and how that can actually even be real and not just sound like paradoxical nonsense, circle talk. But it's so true, because we can see just through how angles grow, how the fact that numbers reflect how many points are made in the shape, and the outline of the shape, what is it outlining? It creates a boundary. There's an inner container. There's a space to be filled. It has stuff in it. It is of something in there, and depending on the vertices, faces, and angles, there's a different quality of space. And remember, like, it's like almost transparent plexiglass, except it's a light quality that has a qualitative content value, because it has purpose. It's so multidimensional and fun to create more tangible visuals, I've been finding for myself, in thoughts and energy, and seeing it in these ways, and working to try to actually verbally describe it. It's so hard to do. I think it's something that later generations will just know and will be much better at. I'm kind of an old dog trying to feel out new tricks. I'm sure the young pup someday will be totally getting it way better than I am. But again, I'm drawing from old dogs myself. I'm trying to sort of steady myself on the shoulders of giants right now that I feel, so many wonderful teachers and students of life themselves, because all of them will say themselves they are students of their content. And people like Walter Russell, of course, I talk about him so much. But there's just so many others who've, speak about light and magnets and energy coming together in many different ways, and whether it's through more of a physicality world, or information, electricity, or even the spiritual realms. There's just a lot of great people doing great work out there that I sort of have a middle ground between all of them, and see, like I had mentioned at the very start of this podcast, these sort of different puzzle pieces, all not, I know they're going to come together at some point, and I have them in these sort of vicinities, but I'm not quite there yet. But it's enjoyable in itself, seeing it take shape, and having a place to just share sort of my own brainstorming kind of things on it, as I sort of look at them and put them back down and sort of hump about them, ponder, and spin my wheels. as always, I was saying these things, but I would put it out there for anyone who's listening and who does listen to my content. If you have any input or ideas, I'd love to hear them. Send me emails, send me messages. If you use Telegram, over there. My email's always in the description. If you find me on YouTube or BitChute, just like all of the only place I am right now. Adding in here at the end, a couple days later, I had gone on for a few minutes here, just in full transparency. Anybody listening fully to the end of my content deserves to know this. First of all, really thank you for listening to me ramble for 25 minutes, because I went back and listened to this myself. I don't usually listen to my stuff again. I mean, sometimes months later I go back to things, or years later, to see how far I've come, or to compare thoughts I have on something maybe I said a long time ago that I can't remember, to see how I've grown. But yeah, I don't usually go right back to something and like re-listen to it. I don't really edit anything that I share, whether it's video. Well, I can't edit video anymore. But yeah, video or audio, I really don't edit them. So anyways, there's some valuable pieces, so I've thought that I will share this podcast. But a lot of it is just straight rambling. And so I just wanted to come back on here. Today is the 31st. And put a final seal on this before I put it out, to really add my personal thanks to you, everyone listening. Thank you. And honestly, I'd love to hear anything people have to say on these topics. I'm going to be speaking a lot more about them. I'm really love the simplicity in the numbers and math, in the architecture and geometry of the world around us. I think finding more joy and happiness and appreciation in the beauty around us, in the natural world, in the natural organic flow, and what's available, how we could learn from it and embody it instead of trashing it, ignoring it, living just on it, So I'm definitely going to be talking more about those kind of things as they're becoming more important to me as well, my own life. I went on for about 2 or 3 minutes that I deleted last time, that I had been talking on the 28th when I started this. And I was talking about truth and shadows, and how truth is like light and shadows are like lies. And I also have a blog coming out. I know I keep saying this about these blogs. I have like 3 different blogs about, halfway to 3/4 done on all of them, and sort of picking at them. But there's such wonderful, deep, and very visual, it's like the symbology is so strong, and it correlates to just so many different concepts, fields, places, and spaces, that I'm in awe of it, kind of, as I do it. It's something that I'm very much enjoying taking my time with, looking over and learning more as I'm writing. It's so amazing, teach learning, the way that we can deepen knowledge of information on things that we have. So yeah, I'm just taking my time and enjoying it with those, but it's of such great deep value that I can't wait to share either. So I keep kind of doing these little podcasts and these little thumb on the dam, kind of let a little bit out. But thank you. I just wanted to come in and say thank you at the end here for listening, and to say that I might have another podcast coming on truth as light and shadows as lies. But for now, I'm going to close this one out here. I think half an hour is more than enough of anyone to listen to me talk about rough draft things that, are sketches. I feel much more confident when I can come to things that I have drawn solidly, but it's always nice to share sketch, a little bit of ideas. So thank you really for listening, and I'm going to stop thanking, and I'm going to leave it here for now, and I'm sure I'll see you next time. Have a wonderful day or evening, wherever in the world you are when you're listening to this, however many times it took you to listen to this. Maybe, like me, you've come back to it here and there. Thank you for your commitment and your audienship and your contribution to our collective. It wouldn't be the same. We wouldn't be the same without you. Thank you. See you next time.